Hi, I'm Dagmar Noll. I'm a resident of Willimantic, Connecticut, and I was holding this third-party Veranda Informational meeting on third parties because a lot of folks are looking for candidates at the local, state, and national level that closely represent their positions and their issues. And so we had two parts. One, which was to explain to people how to petition for third parties to get onto ballots in November. And the second part, which was to talk with a small group of folks from a successful third party in Windham, Connecticut, which is the Bottom Line Party. Our presenter today is Doug Lary. He's an expert in how to petition for a third-party candidate and also on registrations in the state of Connecticut.
So thank you for coming. I wanted to share with you a few ideas about how one petitions, even why, so that if you petition for a candidate to be on a ballot, your effort isn't wasted. I've been involved in petitioning for about 7 years now, and some years I've been more effective than others. Recently, I've become much more effective because I've learned how to look at the signatures before I turn them in. I've passed out some examples of petitions. I'd like you to turn it over and look at the back side, because the back side is the side that matters. The front side is where we get people to sign. You can work all day on that, you can work for weeks on that, but if you get the back side wrong, nothing on the front counts. So it's important to understand the back, because this is where most signatures get lost. This is why people have to go for twice as many, because they know half the signatures they turn in will be discarded or invalidated. And largely it's the back side that causes this, not the front. The front has its own challenges, and we'll get to those. But on the back, the top of the back here says it's the circulator's statement of residency and eligibility and the authenticity of the signatures. That is, hey, I'm eligible to vote for these people, and therefore I'm eligible to circulate a petition for them. If you were from Florida, you would not be eligible to circulate this petition in Connecticut. Eligibility, yeah. Are you from this area? Are you 18 years of age? You can't have a 17-year-old circulate this if he can't vote in November. You have to be able to vote for the person that's on the petition in order to circulate it in Connecticut. Both of these petitions I distributed are presidential in Connecticut, so yeah, based on the age of the people here today, we can all sign these and we can all circulate them. It asks for the circulator's name, your address, and where you live. And you can fill that in advance, and probably should, because when people sign these, experienced people will try to find out, well, who are you? And they'll look on the backside. And if you happen to share a petition with somebody who's not necessarily fond of what you're promoting, they'll look for, what are you doing wrong? So having each of these petitions ready to use with you identified is a good first step. After that, however, there's a whole lot of signatures and swearing and witnessing. All of that has to happen after you get signatures. So those first three boxes to say who you are and identify you, fill those in, then stop. All the rest of this page is after you collect signatures from voters. You can't just circulate this for a few hours and then hand the clipboard over to a friend who finishes it. The process for getting on a ballot is very specific, that you have to attest, swear essentially, that you either know these people or believe them to be who they say they are. They seem moderately convincing, or you saw an ID, or Bob was called Bob by Mary. But the idea here is that you have to say that you are somebody and that you believe the signatures are valid, that you're not committing fraud by submitting this petition. It's rarely an issue, but because this side's important, if you turn it in with this not signed on the back, or no notary, or justice of the peace, or other suitable witness has witnessed you saying so, then they can't count anything on the front. And it's a good way to lose 30 signatures fast. You know, if 30 people you know and personally spoke to, if you haven't got the back right, you could lose all 30 signatures. So if you have questions about the back, feel free to ask them later. But right now, I mostly wanted to emphasize that the back is not unimportant. Sometimes you will get this signed by, you will sign it and date it and give your date of birth in front of a town clerk, because they're one of the people who can can sign that, yes, they saw you personally swear that you know these people or believe they are who they say they are, and that you're of the right age yourself. But your signing here has to happen in the presence of somebody who's allowed to witness that. And a town clerk is a good example. So Pat Spruance in Wyndham would work out fine, but a notary public at a bank, several realtor agencies have such a person, several banks do. And there are several justices of the peace. The Green Party here in town has several, the Democratic Party has several, all the parties have several, so that petitioning can occur without the other party ignoring you. That's why minor parties are allowed so many justices of the peace to support petitioning. Okay, so Jean Dismay is a justice of the peace here in Wyndham. All right, down at the very bottom here, the lower half of the backside, that's the registrars of voters and or the town clerk swearing that they've looked this all over. And as they send it towards the Secretary of State, they're attesting, this is good for so many signatures. I've looked this over and I see this many as count these. Before a petition is even circulated, it is first checked out with town clerk if you're doing a very local effort, or the Secretary of State if you're doing a statewide effort. And so they know what petitions are valid to be out there, and therefore they can accept these from your town clerk and know that, oh yeah, that's the petition with these people on it. And they add them all up and look to see if you've gotten enough statewide. For the presidential race, you'll need 7,500 valid signatures in Connecticut. 7,500 for the president. Any statewide race in Connecticut is 7,500, which means that we'll probably aim for 10,000, 12,000, because sometimes the front side won't be quite legible enough. Let's go over the front side a bit. Very first field matters a lot. Right under the Secretary of the State of Connecticut, it says petition circulated in the town of. These clipboards will hold a lot of paper, carry more than one sheet, because every person you meet will have a town. But they won't all necessarily be of the same town. And each of these physical sheets of paper has to be for a single town. So if you go to Third Thursday or start wandering around at the mall, people in Mansfield and people in Wyndham and people in Lebanon all need to sign a different petition, because that will be checked by different registrars of voters. Eventually, after you attest to, yep, I think all these people are who they should be and I am who I should be, it will then go to a particular town to get checked out. And so all the people on the same sheet need to be from the same town. And so it would not make sense to carry a clipboard with a single sheet of this paper. It would make sense to have one for your town on top and nearby towns that happen to visit you often next, and then 3 or 4 blank ones for who do you meet. Connecticut sees this as 169 towns. We're not talking parishes, we're not talking villages, we're not talking Eagleville or Stores. This is Mansfield, Wyndham. Not East Glastonbury, but Glastonbury. So we may have 800 some parishes and villages, but we have 169 towns. Some people won't know their town, they'll know their postal address. And they will only know Willimantic, and they won't have a clue about Wyndham. And they will only know Stores and not Mansfield. And so it's somewhat up to you to help get this right and find the right page for them. If they tell you Stores, give them the Mansfield sheet. If they tell you Willimantic, give them the Wyndham sheet. And so on. City of Groton? No, the Groton sheet. Yeah. These may be valid names, they may be valid post offices, but there are only 169 towns from the Secretary of State's point of view. There are only 169 towns from the Registrar of Voters' point of view. And so those are the 169 towns you are petitioning in. All the other villages and such are not separate. And you may need to study that some for your region or get a map of these 169s. I could help you get a map of here are the towns or a list. Typically here at Boombox Parade, for instance, no, the Justice of the Peace who witnesses your work on the back and your signature on the back does not have to be from the same town that you're turning the signatures into. It does have to be a Justice of the Peace or notary who's currently valid, not 10 years ago. But the point is, these people are known statewide. They're on a big list. They can be identified. You're just getting your work witnessed by them. The registrars of voters, if they have any questions about who signed that, they should be able to look that up. It doesn't have to be Jean Dismay from Wyndham, witnessed you from Wyndham, circulating in Wyndham. You can circulate in Mansfield and get somebody from New London to witness it and turn it into Wyndham because they were Wyndham voters you found in Mansfield. You do have to be a state resident and able to vote for these people to circulate the petition, though. So often what will happen is you'll go out and work with this paperwork. You will fill up several sheets, and then you will start searching for a Justice of the Peace who can witness you making your attestation that you have done this correctly. Once that happens, these sheets are freer to move about. If you get Jean or some other Justice of the Peace to witness you saying that all this is proper, then that piece of paper can travel without you. They can be gathered together, and all the ones for Wallingford can go together with one traveler to Wallingford. But they have to be witnessed here before they leave your contact. You have to hold and clutch this sheet until it has been witnessed by a Justice of the Peace. You can't just give it up unsigned. If you do, you've wasted all that effort. The backside has to be complete before it leaves your control. After that top left corner, what town? We have already filled in on both of these examples the election date, the party designation. On some petitions, it might be none, by the way, if you were petitioning a candidate to be without party on a ballot. I've run that way, so that when you work with the Secretary of State and get these pieces of paper for petitioning, they want to be clear, what party do you expect to run on? This doesn't actually nominate you, it just creates a spot on the ballot. The party still has to approve you. If you run without a party, of course, just getting enough signatures will do. For instance, typically to run for a municipal office, you only need 1% of the number of people who voted for that office before. So, if 5,000 people voted for that office, all you need is 50. And maybe a few extras just in case nobody can read the scribbles. Let's go over the scribbles. After the candidates who are listed that you're petitioning for, we get the signatures of the people. The first column that says REJ with a little asterisk, that's a rejection code. Leave that area alone. It's on the left there. That's for the registrar to say, can't read it, duplicate. I already have this person on 3 other sheets. Underage, no longer a voter, felon, whatever. That's how they count. That's where it's graded on the left. So leave that part alone. The numbered ones there are the signature first, and then the printed name of the elector or voter. Often these look remarkably the same. I try to encourage people to print first, then sign, because often they sign twice. It's not legible, and so you've already lost that signature if they can't read it. Literally, they're going to try to find the last name, type in the first few letters, see who comes up, and see if it looks like it matches the rest of this.
So can they throw out that ballot because you put print first instead of sign first?
They can do whatever they darn please, and if they aren't fond of you, they will. So some candidates have been terribly surprised by how many they turned in and how few were approved. Encourage people to take this seriously, like a contract. It matters that they can be identified. It doesn't matter how many seconds they spend on it or how fast they go or how many friends they get to sign. It matters how many get validated. So moving across there, printed name of elector really matters. Can the last name be deciphered? Birth date. Turns out it's optional. Half the people will try to put in today's date. They'll even ask you what today's date is, even though it says birth date. Don't trust them to read this. You're going to have to tell them what they're doing. You can be polite about it, or you can be stern, depending on how well you know them. And you can just accept that some of these will not go well and thank them for their time. And they will mess up your sheet. They will take up 2 lines. They will create a bad example for the next person. You might even wonder whether you want to stop using a sheet because somebody made such a mess of it that the next person will follow their example. You don't have to fill each sheet. If you get a person who signs and takes up 3 lines and put his street address where the printed name goes and signed where the date is, give up that sheet. Start a new sheet. People like signing a sheet that looks right. When you're in the company of many friends, doesn't invalidate it, but it puts the registrar in a bad mood, perhaps. I mean, if you're trying to validate these and you have garbage in, you'll get garbage out. It's normal. Understandable. These people are paid a stipend per year. They're not paid per signature that validate them. They're working, and don't waste their time. So if you get a messy sheet, I recommend start another. You can always come back to a sheet later if you're desperate for a little few inches. Do not go from top to bottom. These are a collection that you will own. When you're in a room of friendly people, have them sign separate sheets. Nobody wants to be the first one to sign. Don't go to a stranger and say, here, sign this thing nobody else has ever signed before. No, you do that with people who know why you're doing this, probably each other. You want to go out and deal with people you are less familiar with good examples already above them. Out in the street, people only have a few seconds for this, and they won't give you much more than that. If you meet a crowd of 3 or 4 people, have 2 clipboards. Not just 2 sheets, but 2 clipboards. Couples, they may give you 10 seconds to hear and 10 more seconds to write. But the second person is going to be hard to get if they want to go now. If you have 2 clipboards, it's a lot easier. So you need more than 1 sheet for each town. Have your friends sign first. Everybody likes to be the last signature. It's much easier to get the last signature than the first one. So, the first one should be with people you know. It's okay to turn in a sheet later with only 1 signature from a town. Paper is relatively cheap. Adding toner is relatively cheap. But getting people's time and attention is the expensive thing here. And your time is valuable. So, going across there, birth date is optional, but it's immensely useful. Most registrars can read numerals, but they do have trouble telling the difference between B's and C's and D's and other things that are round. And N's and M's and W's all look alike. And if they aren't familiar with the name and it's outside their culture and it's badly written, they don't even know the first letter. the date of birth can really narrow it down because, oh, you're born April 17th, 1953, and you're on Shady Street. Well, okay, I only got one of those in town, and it looks a bit like that scribble. A generous registrar will give you that one. But if they don't have anything they can connect to solidly that gives them 5 to choose from, they may type in their first guess of the name based on the scribble they see, get nothing, and immediately reject it as not found. It's not your fault if the people you're working with aren't good at handwriting, but you can do some things that will help. The hood of a car, a stone wall, a table. A clipboard in the air is not the easiest way to get a good signature. You can use your own back. Here, sign it here. Just put it up against me and go sign it. Something stable to write against is very handy.
Ironing board.
Ironing board? Hey, very transportable. Like that. And it has a good homey thing. Oh, Gene, great suggestion. Ironing board. Okay, any other suggestions? Okay, but that will get you across the street here. The last field is street address. That does matter. When people move, this can be a problem. A picky registrar might reject one for, gee, they're registered at Main Street, but now you have them elsewhere. So I like to carry a few registration forms for people who need to change their address. They can go online, they can do it. If you're carrying electronics and can do it online, hey, great. And you don't want them to sign where they were registered. You want them to sign where they should be registered, and then get the registration paperwork in a week ahead of the petition. I like to hold petitions and let them mature for a week or two so that all the registration forms I turned in from this process, because I carry another clipboard with registration forms, are submitted first. Then I wait and turn in the petitions so that not only does it match, but it's correct.